presenter authority to you so that you can pull up your screen.
Okay, and I'm not going to be sharing my screen because we couldn't get it loaded and I'm on another computer. So I'm just going to be teaching. So actually, I don't really need to have.
No, you don't. Okay, so I'll
Yeah.
leave this up then there.
Okay.
Hello, everyone. Thank you all for joining. We are going to get started. My name is Dominique Goodson, and I am the Dean of Warrior University. Welcome all. I apologize. Give me 1 second. I just want to start off with some instructions. Please remember to self-mute. If you look to the right of your screen, if you are on a computer, you see in a chat box. You are able to access that chat box and ask questions to the presenter. You can also ask questions to the entire group, which will go to me as the Sickle Cell Consortium. I apologize, I'm getting feedback, so I'm gonna self-mute everyone. Thank you all for joining. Before we begin, the patients, caregivers, and community-based organizations of the Sickle Cell Consortium are delighted to provide Warrior University as an online curriculum-based education model. However, please note, this is a general discussion and is not meant to replace the advice or instructions of your doctor or other healthcare professionals. Statements made are not meant to reflect the policies, thoughts, or opinions of the consortium and do not imply endorsement or recruitment for any product, service, or clinical trial. As a reminder, this class is recorded and will be made publicly available online. Private questions should be addressed to me, Dominique Goodson, on the screen as Sickle Cell Consortium or directly to the presenter. And without further ado, I would like to present Dr. Gayle Rogers, who will be doing her presentation on trauma, isolation, and quarantine. Thank you, Dr. Gayle, for joining us. And thank you so much for doing this presentation. We had a blast with you 2 weeks ago, and we are looking forward to your amazing presentation today.
I am happy to be back on. A lot of feedback somewhere. Okay. Well, you guys, let me say this before we get started. I had an absolute beautiful PowerPoint ready for you all that I prepared with pictures of the brain, with pictures of the body, the skeletal frame, and everything. So let me say this: I'm really pretty smart in most of the stuff that I do. Technology is not my strong suit, and so it seems to me that there are many times that I get ready, and I've been doing these webinars all over the world, actually, for the last several weeks since we've been in quarantine. And it seems that at the very last minute, you know, when you're ready to put something up and you want everybody to see it, it doesn't work. But I'm okay with that because I've learned how to wing it. And so we're going to talk about trauma more than anything, because most people don't seem to understand trauma. And I don't know, some of you that's on with us tonight may have been on last year when I did a presentation on PTSD. And as I was studying this whole trauma thing over the last week or so, what I discovered, a little bit more than what I knew about trauma, is that it actually has the same after effects, if you will, as post-traumatic stress disorder. So let's talk about how do we heal from the trauma that we have experienced in these past 4 months. And I say 4 months, although we didn't really go into quarantine until February. I started hearing about the virus in December when it was it was in China, hadn't even gone to any other country. And so really for you all, for the last 2 or 3 months, social isolation, financial distress, loss of employment, loss of wages, fears about your health, uncertain future are really fueling a mental health epidemic alongside this pandemic. What that means is, and I'm already receiving phone calls that over the months I've been getting text messages, emails, all kinds of things from people that are in need of the services that I provide. I'm a mental health practitioner with 30 years really of mental health experience. I've been in practice for myself now for about 15 years. But let's talk about when the thought gate is open. And our thought gate is the gate to our mind. It's the entryway to our mind. And some of you have read my book that talks about how you change your thoughts. Some of you have heard me teach on it before. But when the thought gate is exposed, panic, anger, or it's like the impulses of an irresponsible mob, thoughts running rampant through your mind. And so since this thing started, people have thought things. Oh my God, what if I get the virus? Oh my God, what if I lose my job? Oh my God, what if I can't pay my mortgage? What if I can't pay my rent? Those are real. Those are real thoughts. But we have to learn how to channel our thoughts. I'm going to be talking to you about the power that you carry. Um, it's real important that you begin to understand who you are. Because if you don't know who you are, if you don't know your identity, and many of you know that this is a favorite of mine of teaching on identity. The subconscious mind is open to all kinds of suggestions. And the bottom line is that the subconscious mind doesn't know truth from fiction. It doesn't know the truth from a lie. It's like a computer. It's like whatever you put into the computer, it's going to spit out, what it's supposed to spit out. But the subconscious mind opens you up to the suggestion of fear, hatred, self-depreciation, anxiety, selfishness, negative forces, worry, greed, all of those things, shame, guilt. It derives from surrounding persons or circumstances. You guys, we got to stop allowing external circumstances to affect the way that we think or the way that we act, the way that we respond to certain things. When the brain and the mind is not functioning properly, we are out of sync with the vibration of Earth's atmosphere. Let me tell you how critical the Earth is, especially for those of you who believe in God, who believe that God is the one that created the universe. I know a lot of people don't. A lot of people believe that we derived from apes. I'm sorry, I just don't believe that. But a lot of people do. But so I'm going to quote a couple of scriptures, and I'm hoping not to offend anybody. It's not my intention to offend anybody, but Proverbs 17:22 says, "A merry heart, the feelings, the will, the intellect, the center of anything, that's our heart, does good like medicine. But a broken spirit," that word broken, wounded, afflicted, it's the mind, the seat of emotions, the ruah spirit, the wind, the breath, the organ of our mental acts or executive functioning dries the bones. So remember this, a broken spirit dries up the bones. And so that word broken spirit is stricken, wounded. So that means that every time you're wounded by words or wounded by someone's actions or whatever, your spirit man is broken. The word dried means to be ashamed, confused, or disappointed. Also, failing, it means to dry up, to wither, to be confounded. And so when we allow ourselves to enter into that brokenness, which is a lot of it is caused by trauma for whatever reason, trauma for what we have experienced recently, trauma from childhood stuff, but trauma in various ways. Broken spirit is like dry bones. Some of you that do understand the Bible have read about the dry bones in Ezekiel, and it talks about how um, the prophet Ezekiel spoke to the dry bones, prophesied into the dry bones. And so we really, to be honest with you, we really have entered into an area of the valley of dry bones. With all, I don't even know now what the count is of how many people have died from this thing. And so when we start looking at the brain, when we start looking at how do we control the brain, how do we control the autonomic nervous system, how do we keep our nervous system intact? And our nervous system regulates the functions of internal organs. It regulates our heart, stomach, the intestines, all of that. Controls even some of the muscles that's within our body. It most important in regulating our shift from fight or flight. And you guys have heard that fight or flight, that we get into something that frightens us, and immediately we go into a different stance. And so it's extremely important. The sympathetic nervous system activates the fight or flight mode, consumes energy, increases blood pressure, decreases digestion, increases the heart rate, even decreases reproduction. And so the parasympathetic nervous system, our responsive mode is that it activates rest. It repairs our body, our mind, it refuels energy, decreases the blood pressure, and it does all of the opposite of what I just said about the reactive mode. And so our brain, after trauma, shifts out of fight or flight back to rest. Repair doesn't occur unless we get some help. Help meaning that whatever's going on with us, that we got to find somebody that we can talk to that knows what's going on with us, and that can really just help. Give you an example. I got a phone call from somebody, and they were telling me about some issues that they were having, and they were all up in arms, and they were really anxious and just going through a lot. And in about 15 or 20 minutes, I was able to get that person calmed down. And so the one thing I realized is that the thing that they were discussing with me was a traumatic event, very much a traumatic event. We can't downplay the events of trauma. There's no way we can downplay COVID-19. It's just amazing to me. I never thought that I would live to see something like this. And yet I know that it's real. And so some things that we may see after trauma, some symptoms that we may experience, constant feelings of threat or danger. It's kind of like being afraid to go out. And I have friends that said, well, I'm not going anywhere, except I'm going to the grocery store. And so some people have literally been home for 2 months without going anywhere. Well, some of you live here in Georgia, in the Atlanta area. And so Atlanta was one of the first cities that opened up. Georgia actually was one of the first cities that opened up. And so, we've, for the last couple of weeks, we've been very gradually going back out. But some people are still extremely frightened. And I understand protection, particularly people already with a compromised immune system, is that it's being afraid to literally go out. But some of the symptoms that you may experience is intrusive thoughts that you can't stop, you can't suppress, triggers that create flashbacks, nightmares, and physical sensations. Remember, I said that trauma is very similar to PTSD because that's really what PTSD is, post-traumatic stress disorder. And so, we're looking at a lot of those symptoms. A sense that the trauma continues to feel present and real. I suspect that some people have even made themselves sick thinking about, but what if I get it? They get a little cold or a sniffle or whatever. What is this about? What if I've got it? It's the inability to focus, to concentrate, to think clearly. All you can think about is the stuff that's scary. Overwhelming. We have an overwhelming sensory overload, interrupted ability to sleep. Some people really haven't been able to sleep during this thing. The feeling that it isn't safe to be still or to relax, or a sense of disconnection from yourself or others and the world. Trauma affects our body all the way down to the cellular level. We experience biological and neurophysiological changes. See, it's interesting that we don't know a whole lot about our bodies. I suspect, though, that the sickle cell community probably knows more about your body than any other culture, because of the things that you have had to endure, particularly the stories that I hear you all tell about going to the hospital and how you're treated in the hospital. And so the thing that you need to know is that all of these symptoms, all of these things that you're feeling, they're real. They're not made up. They're real. You're not crazy. Symptoms are real and not always under our control. And so there's many advances that's taken place in the neuroplasticity, prove that the brain is an organism that's designed to change. And so our brain takes on all of this stuff. And as it takes on the stuff that happens, we begin to act out what's going on in our brain. The remember what I read about the broken spirit, that actually penetrates the bone. It says that it causes, it dries up the bones. The bone and bone marrow, and many of you will know what I'm talking about when I talk about bone marrow, is that all blood cells originate in bone marrow. White blood cells have DNA. Negative words go to the stomach, which has its own separate brain called the gut brain. So you guys, we say a lot of stuff. We don't even realize that we're saying stuff, but we're saying what the media says. I probably watch the news maybe once a week, because the bottom line is that I don't know what's true, what's a lie. I don't know what's real. But when I hear the things that I hear on the news, it's like I'm not so sure that that's true. And so we've got to have something to hold on to, something that we can grab hold of. For me, that's the scriptures. I just simply happen to believe that the word of God is true. Um, so negative words go to the stomach, the gut brain. So now we've affected with the words that we speak. Remember, you guys, that the body is made up 70% water. The brain is about 75% water. So as we're saying those words, as we're taking in, ingesting that we're hearing on the news, we're ingesting the what they're predicting that will happen. All of that is going right here to the gut brain in the stomach. Trauma, broken spirit, goes into the bone, penetrating to the bone marrow. So now you're dealing with something altogether different. When we look at the human skeleton, it performs 6 major functions. It supports our body. We know that. The mere fact that, we're able to walk on our legs and feet. It performs movement. It protects us. It's the production of blood cells, the storage of minerals, and the endocrine regulation. And so, if we think about from an emotional perspective, our heart, which is pronounced lab, it's a Greek name for heart. It's the mind, the feelings, fountain, the seat of thoughts, the will, the intellect, the character, the understanding, the seat of our intelligence. If our mind and our heart is so full of all of the stuff that we get from external circumstances, then we're literally taking on the world's issues. Let's talk about peace, joy, happiness. It's connected to the condition of our heart. Our heart, mind, soul, our thoughts directly affect our physical bodies and our mental stability. We've been talking about the mental health, our mental health. If we don't maintain, imagine, and we've talked about this before, imagine that your body is already sick, your mind is sick, and I know that I've heard that you guys have lost some partners, some friends, some cohorts over the last few months and the last few years. And I know that hurts. But we've got to come to this place. If I could get something to you guys, and here's the way that I live my life. And no, I don't have sickle cell. So I can't possibly even begin to imagine what you all have gone through. But I live my life on the premise that God sent me here to the earth to do an assignment. And when I'm done, I'm done. And then I go and I spend eternity with God. Now, for those of you that don't believe God, you have a whole nother belief system, and wherever you feel that you'll spend eternity. I just happen to believe that it's God. So here's a question that I've been asking a number of times, and why does the Bible say in the beginning God created the heavens and the earth? Why didn't it say in the beginning God created the heavens and Mars or Venus or Pluto? Well, the earth has a destiny. Not only did God create the earth for man to live out our life here, but then he sent us to populate the earth. And so our mandate is to cultivate the earth, and whatever that means, whatever your purpose is, whatever your direction is, your guidance of what it is that you do. I just happen to believe that mine is to touch and change lives all over the world, not just America, but all over the world. How do we activate our internal world? How do we get past all of this stuff? How do we look at trauma, look at all of this isolation? Well, for me, what I've done with the isolation is that I've studied, have read, I don't know how many books during this time. Actually, just registered and got accepted for another doctorate in naturopathic medicine. I'm real excited about that. It was either to do something with the brain or with the body, and I'm just real conscious of wanting to have the body healed. That we have to consciously connect to our thinking. We really do have to think about, what am I thinking about? Am I thinking about the coronavirus and what it's doing to my people? It's killing a lot of Black people. And am I thinking about that? Or am I thinking about what do I do when this is over? Because the whole world has changed. We will never, ever, ever experience life as we did 3 months ago. It will never happen. We got to recognize what's fruitful in our mind and what's not. What causes me to feel good in the morning and what causes me to feel bad? I mean, there are times that we wake up and it's like, oh my God, I don't know what's wrong. I'm just feeling down in the dumps. I'm feeling blue. I'm feeling sad. I'm feeling weepy and all of that stuff. So I have to go through my mind. I mean, literally go through my mind and talk to myself and say, okay, what is this about? What did you watch on TV last night? You know, who was the last person that you talked to? What was the last book that you read? And what I have discovered is that if we don't consciously disconnect from unfruitful thoughts and fear, now you got to ask yourself, what's an unfruitful thought for me? Is an unfruitful thought that, you know, well, I don't know how much longer I'm going to live. Well, the bottom line is that it doesn't matter. To live is Christ and to die is gain, because that means that I get to spend eternity. And I don't have all of this stuff anymore. And so, you know, disconnect from the unfruitful thoughts and the fear. Recognize your internal dialogue and just remember it's a gate entrance. The trauma, if I remember correctly, thoughts, the word for thoughts is an entryway, a gate. And trauma comes from a word called traumata, that means wounding and it means hurting. And we have to determine, where does the wounding come from? Am I wounded by words that people say about me? Am I wounded by things that happen in my life? Am I wounded by a broken body or whatever? But you got to choose empowering thoughts and empowering words. And I say this to people all the time. Choose your relationships wisely. Don't just hop into relationships just because somebody wants to be your friend. Because everybody that wants to be your friend doesn't know what it means to cultivate friendship. Now, how do I change my belief system from a practical perspective? Well, for those of you who are believers, tap into the Word of God. For those of you who are not, you tap into whatever source that you believe in. If it's a universal power, whatever it is. For me, as I always say, it's the Word of God. So listen at this scripture, 2 Corinthians 10, 3-5, and I'm reading from the Passion Translation. For although we live in the natural realm, we don't wage a military campaign employing human weapons, using manipulation to achieve our aims. Instead, our spiritual weapons are energized with divine power to effectively dismantle the defenses behind which people hide. We can demolish every deceptive fantasy that opposes God and break through every arrogant attitude that is raised up in defiance of the true knowledge of God. We capture, like prisoners of war, every thought and insist that it bow in obedience to the anointed one. What that means is that every time I have a thought, like I said, I grab hold of that thought and pull it down. If it's not glorifying God, or if it's not bringing peace and joy to myself, you know, we know what we think about. We know the things that you know, that cause us issues. You guys, we're called to be royal in the natural realm and in the spirit realm. Remember this: God put nearly 100 billion plus neurons in the brain that receive, analyze, and store information about internal and external conditions. We are not to allow trauma to rule or reign over our lives. We know that it's there. We know that it's real. We know that COVID-19 is real. It's realer than anything we've ever seen. We know that. But if we don't protect our mind, if we don't protect our heart, then we're in for a rude awakening. So we can either channel those neurons in the brain the way that they're supposed to be, or we can just let them run rampant and let the thoughts run rampant of whatever we're thinking. Remember this, as a man thinks in his heart, so is he. So that is my spiel on trauma, isolation, and really coping with what it is that we're coping with. And if anybody has any questions at this time, or Miss Dominique, I'll turn it back over to you. Take it away.
Thank you so much for that wonderful and amazing presentation. So, our first question that we have is, how do we combat isolation for those of us that live alone? How do we combat isolation during this COVID-19? What are some things we could do so we don't feel so alone?
That's an excellent question. I think that social media is a great outlet, unless you get involved with the word wars. I just saw something where some lady called somebody the N word, and it was 1,000 and something comments um, on that word, and I think it was in regards to the young man that was just killed. Um, but what I have found is that I have immersed myself in webinars. And let's see, I did a webinar, about 4 webinars last week, and really interaction and talking. Do some group chats, spend some time. Some of you are writers. Some of you have a book inside of you. I believe that the reason that I don't believe that this whole virus thing is a God-made thing, but I do think that God takes everything that's meant for harm and turns it for good for those of us who love Him. And so for me, it's been spending time just having conversation with God, spending time writing, spending time reading, like I said, studying. I think that you guys that are single and by yourselves, I think there are so many things. Get to know who you are. A lot of people don't know how to be alone, but you guys don't think this is strange, but I love my company. I entertain myself. I talk to myself. I talk back to myself. And no, I ain't crazy. I talk to the TV. I listen to music. And so I just do all that. And I try to make sure that I get enough sleep. Sometimes I just end up staying up. But learn to know who you are. Because many times people don't find out who they really are until they get in their 50s and 60s and 70s. You guys are all still pretty young. Learn who you really are. Learn your authentic identity, and that's kind of the way that I see it. There's not a whole lot you can do. You definitely don't want to go to the movies. You sure don't want to go to the bowling alley. Well, some people do. But just learn how to enjoy being with you. That's really the bottom line.
I absolutely love that, because that's one of the things I've been lately. I love the fact that you said there are books inside of us, but not just books, but there are other things. Explore some of your talents that you may have that you never knew was hidden, whether it's painting, whether it's reading, whether it's writing. My writer's block broke during the quarantine, and I got so many chapters written for my book. But as you said, I've also gotten to know myself. But for the warrior community, for the sickle cell community, sometimes quarantine and being alone can bring back bad traumatic experiences from crisis attacks. I know at one point, um, it was a month into the quarantine because I'm in New Jersey, a month into the quarantine, I had started having chest pains. And I remember it just brought it back to when I was in the ICU and it was alone with chest pain. And I started to freak out. I thought I had um, COVID with no other symptoms or anything. I was bawling, crying. How do, with all this isolation and and quarantine going on, how can we make sure past trauma doesn't start to bleed into the quarantine and isolation of
Call
what the
somebody.
patient is going through?
Call somebody. Call somebody and discuss what you're experiencing. Call somebody and talk to them. Say to them, you know what, I think I'm having these symptoms and I'm not quite sure. And if all else fails, go get tested. But the bottom line is you need somebody in your life that you trust and they trust you. Somebody that you don't have to worry about them judging you. You don't have to worry about whatever it is that you call them and say. You don't have to worry about them saying, oh girl, you need to get over that. Call somebody and say, here's what I'm experiencing. Here's the thoughts. Talk to somebody that's got wisdom that can help talk you off that ledge and bring you into a peaceful place. Remember, I said I got a call and the person said to me, I need some counseling. And I said, no, you don't. I say, now that other person might need some. Because I said, tell me what you feel you need. And she started telling me about the other person. I said, oh no, I can't talk with you without talking to the other person. I said, so sometimes we have to step back. So when you see that you're having some issues, call somebody, text somebody, FaceTime somebody, do whatever is necessary in order to bring you to a level of peace.
That's great. I also have been realizing that during this time of isolation and quarantining, that this is giving me and my family time to get to know each other, because everything before was just so fast paced. We might not have spent time and actually talked, or we were going out. This is giving us time to talk and to get to know each other again as not just for friends, but with family as well. I know a lot of people, when they were saying we have to isolate and be quarantined off from family, I know a lot of people were saying, oh no, they're not doing that. They're not doing that. But with so many, with our, what I like to call wisdom generation, being the ones that are affected and the ones that are dying so much, um, how would you tell someone who depends on their wisdom generation, that they're not able to see, but they're trying to make sure that they protect their wisdom generation? What do you tell them to still feel that connection with their wisdom generation? And I'm talking about people like 50, 60 and above, the ones that have been through it all, the ones that we go to seek guidance, great grandmothers. Those are the ones that are being really affected by this. And those are the ones that are dying. And for the African American community, our wisdom generation is very important to us. So how do we keep in contact, especially because a lot of the wisdom generation doesn't do FaceTime and video chat? How do we keep connected so they don't also feel isolated and alone?
Well, I'm the wisdom generation. I'm the one that was most affected. I call the elderly and anybody that would have high blood pressure or whatever. And so I'm the one that really couldn't get out. Even when they released everybody in May, they still said that we had to stay in. I happened to just, I told you I don't know nothing about technology, but I got 2 laptops here and a big screen monitor. Um, they can talk on the phone. And so for those people that cannot um, FaceTime or do the social media thing, call them on the phone. And I can imagine, you know, my friend's mother is in a facility. She been saying she had dementia. And so my friend said about 2 or 3 weeks ago, she said, I'm going to get my mom a little notebook. And so she got the notebook and she sent it to her. Um, and the mom got the notebook. Now the mom is 84. The mom has been chatting with her face to face every day since then. And it just cracked me up. It's like, wait a minute, I thought she had dementia. The mom is like talking. I mean, she's got her children, and so she's chatting and they're doing group chats and all that stuff. I'm thinking that you found that time and that space to write on your book. Now, connect. There's more than one way to connect. See, we've been spoiled. You know, we got all this social media stuff and iPhones and Androids and all that stuff. You know, I remember when we only had pagers. So, you know, your sound, I can't hear you.
Yeah, I remember that too. I remember when we only had pagers. I remember when we didn't have answer machines, we didn't have cell phones. I remember going into the yellow book. My niece actually said, "What was the yellow book?" to me. I never felt that I was that old until she said, "Well, Auntie, what's the yellow book? What's the yellow pages?" So I'm starting to wonder, am I being one of I'm getting to that wisdom age. But yeah.
Not yet. Not yet. You still got some time. But yeah, you know, there's ways that you can do that. But the other thing is that even though we can't get out, um, I mean, you know, I've gone to my daughter's house. I knew that my daughter wasn't out, you know, finagling around or spending time with a whole bunch of people. The only thing she was doing was going to the grocery store and coming home. So, you know, I picked up some food and taken it over there, and we've sat and chat and eaten together. Um, I think you just have to do what you have to do. You have to find out what that is. You know, what is it that you can do? Hope that helps.
Yes, that does. I believe that is all the questions we have. Do we have any more questions?
Or comments.
Yes, or comments. This was actually great. I think what you said about taking this time to learn about ourselves. I already actually talked to myself and I asked questions like if my book comes out and when it comes out, my character actually holds full-blown conversations with her conscious self. Like her conscious self is a whole nother person. And I'm actually like that. I have conversations with myself because if you don't talk to yourself, how else are you going to get to know yourself? So during this time of isolation, I have gotten to know myself very well. I've gotten to know what irks me really bad. I've gotten to know what foods I do and don't like. I've also gotten to know my family more on a personal level because, as you said before, it was so many text messages and FaceTime, but there's actually no more phone calls and sitting on the phone for hours and just talking. And so I've been doing that with dating with my boyfriend, just sitting on the phone instead of just texting and video chat, actually just sitting on the phone and talking for hours. So I think what you said, that is really very helpful to get through this whole isolation and quarantine part. It's extremely helpful.
I think that like My mom is taking this quarantine too seriously because I think it's driving her nuts. Sometimes she go and buy some water and we're like, oh, let me wash the water. It may be infected. It's like, how you gonna wash a water that is like a package? Are you gonna drink the package or are you gonna drink the water? Like, just wash your hands. I mean, what's wrong with that? Sometimes you be like, oh, let's cut up onions and put it under your bed and stuff like that. I was like, come on, relax. Are you taking? She's doing too much. She'll start drinking things that she doesn't need to drink, and she'll be like, "Oh, I'm lightheaded." Like, go sit down. Like, relax. You're taking too much serious. I mean, I don't pay anything about it because I'm a Christian also. So I know God is in control. So when it comes to that, I'm not worried at all. But she's a Christian, but I don't know why. She's worried about so many things. She should be talking like, "Oh, why am I doing this? Why am I doing that?" I think it's getting her crazy. Yeah, it's just too much. Like she drives me nuts. Like sometimes, like, oh, why am I holding this place up? Like, how am I supposed to, holding this place up? I'm not holding anything up. It's just too much.
That's
I
funny.
think a lot of people are. I think a lot of people are scared, and then all the stuff that you're hearing on the news as well. I also like what you said, Dr. Gayle, about the fact that you don't watch the news every day.
Yeah, I don't watch it.
I'm not a big news watcher because every day there's worse and worse things on the news, and I believe that it's scaring people. And then you hear that when it comes to the African American community, compared to we are not just dying from the COVID-19, but we are also being prosecuted and we can't go outside without being arrested or given tickets when other people are not going through the same thing. So I think people are just scared of not just catching it. I think isolation is also getting to them. I think they're freaking out about how is the world going to go back to any kind of semblance of normal? And they want to take precautions. And caregivers to patients to warriors, they go through a lot. You slack up on your mom just a little. She trying to make sure she nor you catch COVID-19. I don't get the washing the water bottles, but she's taking precautions.
Mm-hmm.
We have a couple of additional comments online too. Shamanica commented that she got her mom a Bluetooth speaker and put Pandora on her phone. So that brought her so much joy and allowed her to turn the news off more. I think that's a fantastic comment. And a lot of people seem to have really loved a lot of the things that you've said. Shamanica also commented, once you learn yourself, be that person every day. I love that. And a lot of people have really appreciated most of these questions on here are people replying that they really appreciate comments you've made.
Yes, we have one comment from a Miss Burrs that said, learn to birth and grow your talents and gifts, which I think is so true.
Yes, I agree.
Yeah,
I agree. I'm telling you, we're one of the most talented people on the universe.
Yes, we are.
And develop those talents, and then when you develop those talents, help other people develop theirs. We've got so much to live for. And the bottom line is, let's just live in joy. Let's not live it. I know you guys have lots and lots of pain. I know you experience the depression and the suicidal thoughts and all of that stuff, but live life to the fullest until it's over.
Yes.
That would be my parting word to you all.
Well, thank you. Your presentation was amazing. Just a reminder to remind everyone that Be the Match has partnered to give one-on-one counseling to sickle cell warriors. and we will have the link. It is bethematch.org/SCD counseling. For those of you who are going through a harder time and want to speak to someone with one-on-one, just you and a counselor, you could go to that site and sign up, and it is free of charge to Sickle Cell Warriors. So please, if you need to, go and sign up for that. Also, please don't forget, tomorrow we have Dr. Gayle on us with again, but we also have a panel this time. So we will be joined by 3 other people, and you guys will be able to ask more questions. We will not be Facebook Live, but we will be on WebEx, and please feel free to join us because this will not be recorded. This is more of a intimate session, so the panelists and the viewers can ask the panelists and the moderator questions that they may not want to ask on live or be recorded. So please join us for that. And thank you so much, Dr. Gayle. This was absolutely amazing, very informative, and I thank everyone for participating.
Excellent.
And we hope to see you all tomorrow.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
Thank you for joining us. You are very inspirational and very amazing. I think we get so much out of what you tell us and out of your presentations. It's very helpful.
Thank you. I appreciate you sharing that with me.
And congratulations, a second doctorate.
I know. Can you believe it?
I read that.
Wait a
Okay,
minute.
it's your second doctorate.
I'll be 75 when I finish it.
That is phenomenal.
Yes,
Yes.
I'll be 70. It's a 2-year. It's a 5-year program, but you can finish it in 2 years. And so I thought, you know what? I study all the time anyway. I research all the time anyway. The body is my passion. I've been wanting to do this for about 12 years. And I kept saying, oh, you know what? You don't have enough time to do this. Well, I do, and I'm doing it. So
Congratulations.
thank you. I'm excited about it. Yes, thank you. All right, I'll see you guys tomorrow evening.
Thank you so much. See you all tomorrow evening. Have a good night. Be safe, everyone.
You too.